Welcome to this episode of this podcast for which I have given no name. You may think, why am I starting this podcast without a name? Well, there are a lot of things I don't have ready for this podcast, but one thing I did not want to do was take too long waiting to get everything in place. I wanted to go ahead and start getting the wheels turning for this podcast. So what I can tell you about this podcast is it is about productivity and self-development for creatives and those in the workforce. Whether you work for yourself or you work for somebody else, this podcast is for you. And currently I'm having a cup of a cold brew coffee that I made earlier in the week. I've actually been making cold brew for the past couple of weeks because I needed a way to have coffee kind of ready for me every day without having to actually go through the process of making coffee. And to be honest, I don't really have the proper coffee appliances ready at hand. The only coffee appliance that I have right now is a Keurig that is clogged up. So I've been making some ratchet coffee all week. So that's fun. So the topic today is how to avoid frustration. So in the Bible, in Mark chapter 9 and 43, it says, if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. This simply means if something is causing you to fall, causing you to lose yourself, to lash out, to become frustrated, let it go. That verse is applicable to a lot of things, but I'm just going to focus on anger and frustration for this episode. And I don't say let it go as in stop entirely with what you're doing if that's something that you enjoy doing. I'm merely implying that you should let go of the situation that is causing that frustration. So as a creative, I use my laptop a lot for like heavy video, photo, and like music editing. And sometimes, a little more than sometimes, my laptop tends to lag out on me. It crashes, the applications close out. Sometimes I didn't get to save my work before it crashed. And this occurrence tends to trigger me. I'm thinking, why can't this work? I need to get this done right now. I need my laptop to keep up with me. And so what I'm holding on to isn't necessarily the editing on my computer, but the need for my PC to keep up with me. And after some months of fighting my PC, of upgrading the hardware, just for it to be just as slow as it was before, I had to come to terms with that reality. It just can't keep up. And that's all there is to it. So now if I run into an issue, I know that I need to have a little more patience with my PC. If it's acting up, I'll simply just get up and walk away and come back later. So I want to share a few things that I've learned from this situation about getting frustrated. So one, I needed to let go of the frustration and walk away because being in that mindset is wasteful and unproductive. Number two, if I stayed there at my PC trying to continually work my project, I'm then going into it with an awful mentality. I'm working on that project with a sour mind, a hastiness to get the project done before it crashes. And then that creative flow gets choked up. And three, if I did let go and walk away, it gave me the opportunity to focus on other things to get done. I could step away from the PC and start cleaning or reading, something else that will be a better use of my time in that moment. So now I'm going to focus on a few ways to avoid frustration. So one, be aware that everything will not go according to plan. So let go of the outcome you intend for a project. Understand that you're going to do your best, and that's all there is to it. Two, have a positive and determined mindset so that the obstacles don't deter you from accomplishing your goals. I know I said earlier to walk away from the situation that's causing that frustration, but that doesn't mean never return to finish that project. It doesn't mean give up on the project. Now, it may take longer than expected, but I encourage you to continue to push forward until that project is finished. And three, figure out how you can overcome that obstacle. If you work on a project and you know the roadblock, you are aware of that obstacle that's about to come your way, find out what you can do to work around it. So for me, when I'm dealing with my PC, I would sometimes restart my computer before starting a project, or I would clean the disk drive on my PC so that it is as fresh and ready as it possibly can be. If I know the obstacle before it occurs, I know what to do to mitigate its impact. So, as a brief recap, some of the things that I've learned from getting frustrated is being in that mindset is wasteful and unproductive. Being in that mindset causes you to dive into a project with an awful mentality and chokes up that creative flow. And walking away from it can give you the opportunity to focus on other things to get done. And then a recap on how to avoid frustration: be aware that everything will not go according to plan. Have a positive and determined mindset, and figure out how you can overcome that obstacle. So what's next for this podcast? Well, by this point, it will have a name, it will have an image. I have some music probably playing in the background after I do this closing. I'm going to have some more things ready for this project. The reason for me doing this is I needed an outlet to pretty much put out all the things that I've learned, the experiences that I've had between being a videographer, being a creative, and working jobs that I don't really like. I've been able to learn from every scenario that I've been in, from every experience that I've had. There are things that I had to learn from them. Otherwise, having those experiences meant nothing if I didn't learn from them, right? So that's what this podcast is for. If you are aware of who I am prior to this podcast, you probably know me as Josh the Creative. I have a YouTube channel that I was working on for a few months, and that was kind of a way for me to kind of put out some of those lessons about being productive and kind of building yourself up. And so in the future, if you had watched any of those videos, they're all still up there. If you enjoy them, that's great. There's a possibility that in the future, depending on how this project goes, that I may begin to combine both of the channels, so to say. And you may end up hearing some topics discussed on this podcast that I already touched on in that YouTube channel. And so before I close, I have one book to recommend you guys. I think at the end of each of these podcast episodes, I'm going to recommend some kind of book, podcast, either channel or specific episode, or some other form of content that I would recommend that is helpful to kind of building yourself up, or something that's good to be reminded of as you dive into work or dive into your next creative project. So the first book I want to recommend is Millionaire Success Habits by Dean Graziosi. Now, this book kind of has an interesting journey with me. I had never heard of this guy before. If you have heard of him, then you know exactly who he is and how big of a deal it is to have a book of his. But I got one fateful YouTube ad with Dean Graziosi talking about his spiel, and then I kind of brushed it off or whatever. But I got more and more, and then I visited the website advertising this book that he had. I'm thinking, oh well, not really sure. And then so I forgot about it, left it. Well, the YouTube ads kept on coming, And there was one particular ad that almost was designed to occur after I had visited the website. And that is what got me. And I'm mad about it because I don't like giving into the trap that they set, but it worked. He was offering this book for free. You just had to pay for shipping. And the other caveat is you pretty much had to cycle through his website that was pushing over and over and over his different workshops and different lessons and all that kind of stuff. And that's where the real money was. So I had to painstakingly watch videos that I couldn't skip or mute or pause or anything just so I can process to get this book, Millionaire Success Habits, the gateway to wealth and prosperity. So the journey spiel is over, but so the actual book, I got this book not with the mindset of, oh, I want to be rich, but I wanted to, what fascinated me, what interested me in this book was pretty much it talking about different habits that people who are successful have, the habits that pretty much build them up for success. Now that success doesn't have to mean money. You know, that success can mean freedom and opportunity to do other things. And I read this book like a year or so ago. Got a bunch of sticky notes, got a bunch of spots highlighted. There's even a section in the back of it where you can take your own personal notes. So I read it a while ago. I gave it to my brother for him to borrow, and I wanted to revisit it. It's been a while to look into it, but I wanted to go back through those highlights, go back through some of the things that I marked that I saw that were valuable. So one of the first things that I highlighted in the introduction says, successful people, whether they're working for somebody else or working for themselves, do whatever they do to the best of their ability, as if the boss is watching them every minute of every day. I learned that in everything you do, always do your best. Man, that particular chunk, that nugget of information, that carried with me. And I'll probably talk about that in a later video as I dive into ethics and things about like the workplace. These are experiences that I've had when I was a dishwasher at a restaurant in Birmingham, and some things that are also going to be coming from the job that I have now while I'm working in Columbus, Georgia. Okay, so I really hope that you got some value out of this episode. Wherever you're listening to this, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you share it, talk about it, comment, reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram. I'm most active there at Josh the Creative. No special characters or anything like that, just Josh the Creative. I exist on Facebook, but I don't use Facebook that much. If you want to go back to some of the earlier stuff that I've produced, that I've created, you can go to my YouTube channel, Josh the Creative. And if you've never seen me before, I'm the black guy with dreads. So let that be like an indicator on which channel you're looking up. So thank you all for listening, and I will chat with you, talk with you next time. Deuces.